Thanks, Winston. Hi, my name's Chaplyn. I'm a professional singer. I have been for about 15 years. I'm a filmmaker and a painter. Just by a show of hands, has anyone here either struggled with their own mental health or had someone close to you who struggled with mental health? So it looks like this is an issue that affects pretty much all of us. And I want to share with you that this is my first time ever speaking in public about my journey with mental health. So it's really special to me tonight to be in this awesome, vulnerable place of sharing. So let's start from the beginning, shall we? Growing up in a tiny little hippie town called Nelson, BC, 10,000 people, what I had was singing. I loved to sing. And so when I grew up, I came up with a plan that no one has ever thought of before. Move to Los Angeles and get famous. When I got to LA, I did not know a soul. And I lived in my car for several months, and I played my guitar and sang on Venice Beach. And a group of homeless men that were living on the beach became my backup band. Amongst my fellow homeless, I was a star. And I thought about how crazy that was. 6 years later, stepping on stage in front of 350,000 people at the Indianapolis Speedway, I'm now a backup singer for a pop star on a national tour, singing on television and performing with some of LA's top session musicians. I've made it. The seeds of my childhood dreams blossomed. And on top of my music career, I've got great friends. I'd gotten married. I have a community. I'm doing volunteer work. It's really exciting times. I'm a part of something. So then, the country falls into massive economic collapse. It's the housing market crisis. In California goes Baroque. Everything is literally shutting down. There's no work anywhere. You walk into a restaurant and there's like a stack of resumes at the front door. You could drive down Wilshire Boulevard and see people just randomly walking out of office buildings with a box of their, containing their desk items in their hands. People were moving in 8 to an apartment or just leaving California in droves. And then suddenly my tour was also shut down and I'm out of work too. My husband falls ill out of nowhere. We'd actually been in the middle of a separation. It was, we loved each other. Gonna bring us to the present tense. We love each other and we're struggling in our relationship. It's quite painful. And I'm just beginning to pack my things. And one night he comes home, he's not feeling well. And after a few short days of what we think is a head cold, he becomes delirious and I rush him to the hospital within 5 minutes of his throat collapsing. Thank God, I think, we'll be home tomorrow or in a day or two. Fast forward, 6 weeks later, we've been in ICU the whole time and my husband is on his deathbed. He has a tooth infection that's gone septic. The infection took over his whole body. They can't get it under control. He's got staph, MRSA, pneumonia. His organs are shutting down. There's fungus growing on his skin. I'm cleaning it off every day. We're taking like a liter of fluid out of his lungs every hour. We'd had so much tension and pain in our relationship over the last year. And I'm asking myself, why is this happening? Why is this happening? This can't happen. This can't end this way. I stay with him 22 hours a day. I go home only to change my clothes and to eat. I sleep on a ledge by his bed, and I'm linked to him. I wake up in the middle of the night when his temperature is spiking, when he's choking and the nurse doesn't get there quick enough. I know how to suction his lungs. Every patient that came into the ICU while we were there, into our wing, left dead. I learned a lot about being in the ICU, and you need someone to watch over you, and I watch over him. And I watch as he dwindles from a 6-foot man, 215 pounds, to skin hanging off a skeleton. The doctors come to me and they say, your husband's gonna die. And I say, okay, I got that. What's our time frame? And they said, probably today. And so I phoned the family and I let them know that they cannot stall any longer if they want to say goodbye. And they arrive in a swarm from Texas and they flood into the room. And I say, wait, just let me tell you what you need to do. You can't just run in. He's so sick. You can't be exposed to him. He can't be exposed to you. Let me tell you how to take care of him. And they don't want to hear anything from me. And they ask me to leave. And I'm scared and I don't know what to do. So I just go home for the night. 6 o'clock the next morning, a family member, a woman, kicks my bedroom door open, grabs me by the hair, and drags me into the living room. She says, his brother's written an affidavit. We'll take it from here. We don't want you anymore. Give us your keys and get out. There's 3 people taking my stuff and throwing it out on the front lawn. I get into a huge screaming fight with her, and I'm like, who will take care of him when he wakes up? They force me out of the house in my underwear, and I pick up everything I can fit into my car, and I drive from Los Angeles to Vancouver, not knowing if my husband is alive or dead. And that's how I arrived here 9 years ago. I'm penniless. I'd spent my last money paying bills at the house. I didn't realize my husband has run up this massive debt, not taking care of things he needed to take care of with his business during the recession. I need to find work. As soon as I arrive, I instantly go walking up and down the street looking for jobs, and despite my extensive resume in the past in hospitality industry, working in high-end restaurants, hotels, no one will hire me except for Denny's on Davie Street, and it's the graveyard shift. And so in a couple of nights, I'm wiping a greasy table at 2 o'clock in the morning, picking up change for my tip in a polyester uniform. And I'm thinking about how 4 months ago I was singing on David Letterman. I keep my LA phone on in my pocket all the time. I have no idea what's happened to my husband. I have no way to reach him. His phone is off. And about a month later, I get a text from his phone, and it says, "Where are you?" And I say, "Oh my God, Stephen, is that you? Are you alive?" And he says, "Yes." He can't speak. He's lost his epiglottis. His vocal cords are damaged. The dental surgeon had come back and removed the tooth, and he made a comeback. His family left them there. He's destitute, desperately broke, and so am I. And we have no way to see each other. If there's something like a threshold for the amount of trauma that you can hold in one life, mine seems to be cracking. I had already overcome so much in my life. I grew up in a household of domestic violence. It was generational in my family. As a young woman out in the world at 17, I experienced more violence, housing instability, financial instability, sexual assault. And I fought for my life to make something of myself. to make my dreams come true, and I did. It was a miracle. But here in Vancouver, I find myself thinking that there must be some kind of magnetic force of destiny that, like a chain, ties you to your past, that you can't escape where you came from and those limitations. A fog takes over my mind. I hang up the phone. I don't know who I was talking to. I can't recall my days at all. I'm feeling distant from people, from life. There's like a thick glass wall between me and the rest of the world. It alters how things look. It turns all the sound into this droning buzz, and it blocks the relevance. I ask myself, is this real? Am I real? I have no idea what is happening to me. For the first time ever in my life, I get fired from a job. I'm not the kind of person to get fired from a job. They say it seems like I'm not up for being there. My family is frustrated with me. They don't call as much. My friends either try to get me to lighten up, or they look at me kind of helpless and don't know what to do, and I don't want to bring them down, so I avoid them more and more. I try to remember myself. Wasn't there this woman, so vibrant, so resilient, a fighter? She told funny stories. She had friends who loved her and sang for thousands of people. What happened to her? I can't see her in me anymore. And if there's a way back to her, I just can't remember. At some point, there's a 5-month stretch I don't get out of bed. I don't see it happening. It just happens like that. It's hard to explain, but it's like being under an ocean. And then that battle, an endless battle, trying to reason daily why I should not end my life. It's 9 months of this crippling depression that I cannot understand. Voices bombarding me, you're a loser, you're a failure, you'll never contribute to anyone, you'll never be loved the way you need to be loved, you're a waste of space. You're hurting people with all your pain. Stop it. Just stop it for good. I give away my guitar. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever called the suicide crisis line, but as it turns out, not all of their volunteers are exactly crisis line material. The call this night goes a little bit like this. Oh my God, that's so sad. I feel so sad. I don't know what to say. That's terrible. Maybe you'll feel better. Maybe you'll feel better tomorrow. Okay, plan B. I walk myself straight to the hospital and check myself in at VGH. There they put me in a yellow gown on a bed in the hallway under fluorescent lights and leave me there all night as people are whizzing past me for endless hours. I fall asleep with a flannel blanket over my head, and in the morning they just send me home. Someone says, I hope you feel better, dear. Totally. That was a great night's sleep. I go back home and I get an email from this music colleague I don't know very well, but he's seen me. I bumped into him somewhere and he noticed I was depressed. The email has no subject and there's an MP3. Curious. I lay on my bed and listen to it, and it's a talk. Someone's giving a workshop and they're talking about brain science. and this seed gets planted in me. Here's what I learned. We get biologically addicted to our emotions. What? What? So our emotions, each emotion we have is a chemical. It's called a peptide, and it's made in the hypothalamus of the brain. And every peptide has its own completely unique shape. There's a different and specific peptide for anger, jealousy, despair, resentment, hopelessness. And when we experience a strong, something that causes a strong emotional response, the hypothalamus floods our body with this chemical of that emotion. And the emotion goes through all of our body, and it attaches to all of our cells, muscle cells, tissue cells, organ cells, and we feel it. And that feeling sends a signal back to the brain, which causes the brain to recall the event, which then again triggers the hypothalamus, which then again releases the chemical, gets flood into our body, and the emotion again attaches to all of our cells. Now, our cells are always splitting and reproducing. And when a cell gets bombarded with enough of the same chemical, it adapts. It develops a receptor site for that very emotion. And just like we get addicted to any other chemical, we get addicted to our emotions. And it's safe to say that whatever emotion you feel habitually and most often, you have a chemical dependency on. So that means before you even get out of bed in the morning, on a cellular level, you're craving a hit of a certain emotion, and your brain will think whatever it needs to think to make that hit happen, whether that means recalling the past or interpreting the current events in such a way that it will trigger that emotion. Oh my God. It hits me. So what if I'm just an addict of despair? Like a heroin addict, completely taken over. And what if I try to wean myself off of that emotion? What if I stop thinking about my life and trying to figure it out and the failures of the past and trying to make sense of it and just focused on trying to feel better? But how can I do that? Because at this point, I'm so far down the hole. I know that I cannot stand in front of the mirror and say affirmations of self-love. I just can't generate that kind of positivity. I'm too far gone. And I know, because I've tried. This depression is literally killing me. I need to be reprogrammed. Like a new program needs to get installed. But how? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to know what I'm dealing with, what emotions specifically. Like, I know I feel bad, but I need to know what emotions. And I need to know what the thoughts are. So I get a notebook out, and I put it on the counter, and for 3 days, I get really curious about my thoughts and my emotions. Whenever I feel the slightest thing, I write it down. What is that emotion? And I give it a name. And then I ask myself, what am I thinking right now? And I write it down. And I do this for days until I've exhausted every familiar thought and feeling. And what do you know? There's a pattern. I see that there's a number of topics that suck me into a vortex of despair. So if these subjects are like a trigger point for all this pain, then can I use these triggers and kind of create a new thought pattern to end up at a different destination emotionally? So I know what the subjects are, and I write them down on a new page. And for 24 hours, I get really focused, knowing that my life depends on it. And I write new thoughts beside these subjects, things that I wish I believe. I want to believe. Or if I could just get peaceful inside myself for just a moment, I would believe to be true. For example, loneliness. Just the sound of that word could suck me down for days. And so I write, I cherish my alone time. Life is so busy and it can be so hectic, but when I'm alone, that's when I nourish my creative spirit and do self-care. Relationships. I gracefully let go of relationships that don't serve me. I make room for relationships that are mutually empowering and uplifting. Men treat me with respect. I have wonderful male friends in my life who are positive. I'm a part of an ever-evolving world that is moving in love and expanded consciousness. I flow with ease and serenity, and I write, and then I edit it down to be concise, and I have a document, and I record myself speaking it. It's 18 minutes long, and I listen to it 6 times a day for 40 days. The first week, I feel ever so slightly more, it comforts me just a little bit, a tiny bit. The second week, I'm feeling a little more neutral. The third week, I'm starting to feel different. And the fourth week, things are showing up in my life miraculously and suddenly consistent with my writing. This was the beginning of my healing journey. I called this piece of writing my manifesto, and I was filled with a sense of awe and wonderment at my discovery. I reprogrammed myself to a new way of thinking that had me feeling in new ways. And I continued to write more and more healing and growth and joy into my script. As I wrote more possibilities in, more discoveries came. I found my way to healers and therapists, and it was revealed to me that I had been suffering with complex post-traumatic stress syndrome, and that one of the #1 symptoms is suicidal ideation. Compassion emerged for myself and what I had been through. I continued to reach out and find therapies to treat PTSD, including Vipassana, a 10-day silent seated meditation technique that got me into my body and healed my nervous system tremendously. And then I discovered reaching out and love and friendship and community. Creative inspiration appeared. Learning became a new strength. I taught myself to become a recording engineer, a filmmaker, a painter, and soon I discovered myself empowered in a new creative life, fueled by activated interest. Curiosity is the opposite of judgment. When I judged myself and what I had been through, I was hopeless and I was helpless. But a spark of curiosity over a little piece of brain science became a revelation. I did not have to stay broken. I didn't have to blame myself for what I went through. I was empowered to become a self-scientist and to discover what needed to change in me. There's no single prescribed fix for any of us. We each have to forge our own path of healing, which is not to say that we need to do it alone, but it requires us to be curious. My curiosity moved me to fight for my life, and that's why I'm here. My life now is about staying curious and seeing what I might just continue to find. Get curious, water that seed, and watch it grow. Thank you.